You know how long, D, it took me to try and Google to find that song for our intro? Just to I want the full version of that song. It amps me up.
What's the song?
I don't know. I think it's just a production song.
Okay.
I need to, we need to do some research upstairs to our TV folks up there. Cause I think there's gotta be a longer version of that song. I just gets me pumped up here for Inside the Kentucky Derby. We're back again here, previewing a massive weekend here on the road to the Derby with 4 big stops and key races on the road to the Derby. And of course, before we kick off this week's episode of Inside the Kentucky Derby, we have to give our friends at Woodford Reserve a shout out. And, Woodford just released the brand new Kentucky Derby bottle this week. It's a heck of a looking bottle, D. Commemorates Secretariat. I can't wait to have a couple in my office. We'll have to see how long they can remain unopened.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Absolutely great bottle. Woodford Reserve and the folks at Brown-Forman who produce Woodford Reserve have really delivered. They do an annual Derby bottle, but this year commemorating the Triple Crown sweep and the memorable win in the Run for the Roses in 1973. It's absolutely gorgeous. A collector's item you'll want to have.
Absolutely. And of course, Woodford Reserve has more than 200 flavor notes in every sip. Woodford is always a spectacle for the senses. Please enjoy responsibly. Can't wait to get my hands on one of those bottles. It's a great collector's edition for this year's Kentucky Derby, which we are still trying to figure out who the real contenders and pretenders are for the first Saturday in May. And I'm hoping this weekend can answer a lot of questions, because I think 2 races, out of the 4 here in North America, of course, the European road to the Kentucky Derby continues on Friday at Dundalk, but the 2 of the 4 races here in North America, the San Felipe and the Fountain of Youth, I think will answer a lot of questions for us, Darren, on, who can separate themselves in these 2 major powerhouse regions on the road to the Derby.
I agree. We get to see the return of champion 2-year-old Forte in the Fountain of Youth. Will he need to, knock the rust off? Or will somebody be able to handle him? Out in the West Coast, we have the horses that were previously trained by Bob Baffert have been transferred. Those that are wishing to accrue points. I know our racing office did a review of full certificates within Encompass, which is it's like a nationwide database that all the racing departments can utilize. And the following Triple Crown nominated horses were transferred, and they're eligible to accrue points. Arabian Night, now with Tim Yachteen, Arabian Lion with Yachteen, Carmel Road with Yachteen, Fort Bragg with Yachteen, Fort Warren is in the hands of Brittany Russell, Gilmore, now trained by Brendan Walsh, Harlow Cap with Steve Asmussen, you have Hijazi with Yachteen, Mr. Fisk with Yachteen, National Treasure with Yachteen, Reincarnate with Yachteen, and then Uncle Jake went to Brittany Russell. 2 horses of note that were not transferred, Cave Rock and Faustin. So either they're behind schedule or the Derby is, the Derby is definitely not in their plans. So we have a number of those horses entered in the San Felipe out west. We have some promising, new shooters like Go Rocket Ride and Skinner. How will they stack up with some of the more established runners? It's going to be fun.
Yeah, why don't we start out west in this road to the Derby chat, and we'll go out there first to talk about the San Felipe. We can work our way east. Also have the 1 Mile Gotham in New York and the John Battaglia Memorial at Turfway. So a lot of action on the road to the Derby this weekend.
And if you're looking for free Brisnet past performances to follow along with the podcast, I know you can find them on the, via Twitter at Brisnet. I know my Twitter account at Derby Media. We will share those links. And so we'll at Horse Racing KK.
Absolutely. And so we'll have those links out there for you. I'm looking at my Brisnet ultimate PPs right now sitting in front of me for Saturday's San Felipe, which will go at approximately 5:30 Eastern as race 6 on Santa Anita's program. $400,000 purse out at the San Felipe. And it's really, trying to decipher the Yachtine trainees, I think, in here, Darren, which ones can, sort of make themselves the A squad out there. We've talked about the B squad when they were under trainer Bob Baffert's care, and some of the ones that we've seen already that have shipped east and been transferred. And so it's really trying to figure out, who's been coming out of the best races. And I think it really starts with that Los Al Futurity, because you're going to have the return of Practical Move, who's, run against a couple of these in here, including National Treasure and Fort Bragg. Why don't we start with Practical Move? He won that Los Al Futurity, hasn't been seen since. Overall, what were your thoughts on the Los Al Futurity? I thought it was maybe a little bit weaker compared to some of the horses that we've seen out west.
The Los Al Futurity, and I'd even, throw the early January races in California, the Sham, the Bob Lewis, even. Those are, the big boys aren't showing up necessarily. Mm-hmm. Now, Practical Move, who is a natural Tim Yachtine trainee.
Yes.
He ran very fast. The light bulb went off. Very nice victory. Drew away, really kicked clear, but it was just a 5-horse field. But it was a fast winning move. I think he's probably the horse to beat in here still. This race is going to come up with a fast pace, I believe. Go Rocket Ride's probably going to go to the front. What do you do with National Treasure? National Treasure is one that intrigues me, but that, third place finish in the Sham was a real head scratcher for me. Mm-hmm. Can he rebound from that? But National Treasure will be forwardly placed. Hijazi, who has been a very interesting colt, purchased for $3.5 million. I think the most expensive purchase on the Triple Crown.
He is
among the nominees. Does he want to go this far? The 9. And by the way, I think he'll want to go, a mile and a 16th, but is he a true Derby horse? Fort Bragg, I think, is going to be forwardly placed. And then, your next flight, kind of mid-pack, is going to be, Practical Move, Mr. Fisk. Behind them, probably Bluegrass Go-Go, Genius Jimmy, and Crypto Ride. Chase the Chaos from the El Camino Real. Derby is going to test dirt for the first time. I expect him to be, far back, along with possibly Skinner, who, was a very impressive come from behind winner last time out. Very intriguing race. But boy, it's a question of who's going to take the step forward.
Mm-hmm. And it's so intriguing with Hijazi when you look at this horse, because with the $3.5 million purchase price, a New York bred son of Bernardini, he's out of a Medaglia d'Oro mare who's only 1 for 11 lifetime, but the mare was a half to a horse who was a New York bred dirt router. So, maybe if you go way back in the pedigree, that dirt route is going to be influenced on Hijazi. He started, obviously he was well bet with the purchase price always, going 5.5 furlongs at Del Mar, where he finished runner-up twice there, which was unlike many of the Baffert trainees, because Bob was winning all the maiden special weights in California. And then they sent him right to the American Pharoah at Santa Anita, where he stretched out for the first time, and he finished a well-beaten 3rd, but he came back to break his maiden impressively, going 6.5 furlongs. It's just interesting to see those, differences and distances, and, him excelling at 6.5 furlongs in a ho-hum field, I'd call it. And then, the one route try, he was pretty well beaten. So how much does he have to step up, I think, to make his name well known on the road to the Derby picture in this particular spot against these particular horses? I think it's amazing. It's a massive question mark, and I think the betting will be there on him too. If if I'm reading through the lines correctly.
Yeah, he's going to get bet. He does need to move forward. The two fastest horses in the race are Practical Move and National Treasure. And we have the question mark with National Treasure last time out. Behind Reincarnate and Newgate, it was just, he had every right to win. And
I just didn't.
And he just didn't. So that's where the big puzzle comes from. Hijazi needs to run a little faster to catch up with them. Go Rocket Ride was a very intriguing first out winner for Richard Mandela, who is a very conservative, take your time, patient horseman.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he's stepping him up from 6 furlongs to a mile and 16th here in the San Felipe is a very encouraging sign. Now, at the same time, where else are you going to run them? Right.
Sure. Unless you have to ship out of state.
First level allowances in California typically don't go, right?
No, and that's from the stat of all the Baffert winners. Yeah. It's, there's no one to fill those races.
So he was fast on debut. He has to get faster. The Candy Ride and the daughter of Uncle Mo, Beyond Grace, hard to gauge Beyond Grace. That was a Chad Brown trainee who was winless in 3 starts. But I think from a gambling stamp, and then you have the fast pace, right?
Sure.
So can Skinner come and roll from behind and pick them up?
Well,
and where did the light bulb go off last time? I mean, it was a very impressive win. They obviously had high hopes, but he's a little bit of a plotter.
He sure is. And the one thing I want to keep an eye on too is, in California, they've experienced, tons of rainfall over the last week. It was, they canceled the programs last week and postponed some races. Does that tighten up the track now because of all the moisture in it and drying out? And does it make it more of a speed favoring racetrack because of that moisture that's tightened up the track from the rainfall?
Yeah, that's the beauty of watching those races in advance in California to see how they go. And by the way, speaking of that, I did a little intel on Arabian Night.
Here we go. All right.
And it's a little bit of the circumstances of the weather and the spacing between races is why you have that missing official breeze.
Good to know. So as Jonathan Churro reported last week that he's possible for the Arkansas Derby or Santa Anita Derby. So very intriguing race of, all of the main contenders in Southern California, aside from Arabian Night. And, will it, have a horse that, could match up in the Santa Anita Derby against Arabian Night? We'll have to wait and see on Saturday. It's tough for me to pick one of these in here, Darren. I don't know, obviously with the pace scenario, if I had to pick one, if you had to tell me who to pick, I'm going to take a flyer in Mr. Fisk on the outside, who should sit a pocket trip, is another one that does have to move forward, but I think he's going to sit the perfect trip and just off of from the fast pace and maybe able to get first run at these. He does break from that 11 hole on the far outside. So early positioning, will have to be a thing for him. He may get caught a little wide into that first turn, but I do think he will be able to make the first run against a very hot pace in here, even though he does need to get faster, but a very, intriguing field of 11.
Yeah. I'm taking a little bit of a wait and see approach. I like National Treasure best. He's going to be tucked down on the inside. Does he want to get on the outside of horses? Waiting to see who steps forward here.
Yeah, absolutely. So that goes as race 6 again on Saturday's program at Santa Anita, 5:30 approximate post time here on the East Coast on a very jam-packed weekend. And I think, prior to that, all eyes are going to be down in South Florida, where we're going to have the return of Forte, who's been at the top or near the top of many of ours road to the Derby, sort of say top 5, top 10 lists, as he makes his first start off of a layoff for trainer Todd Pletcher in the Fountain of Youth. He's going to be the big favorite in there, 7-5 on the morning line for him. You also have the top 2 from the Holy Bull, the stablemates Rocket Can and Shadow Dragon. Still waiting to see on General Jim, who did have a cough earlier this week down at Gulfstream Park. Don't know if he's going to run. Doesn't sound promising for that. He would either be pointed towards the Tampa Bay Derby or the Florida Derby. And then you have the return of Blazing Sevens, who finished 4th to Forte in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Do you think Forte is vulnerable in here, Darren? Because I'm trying to figure out who I like to beat him, and it's still a big question mark because I think he's faster than all of these horses in here, and I just can't put my finger on the one that I would want to beat him.
I think an 80% Forte is faster than everyone in here. I really do. We don't need to wax poetic of Forte. I mean, he was so professional. We all know about how, winning anywhere from 5 to 8.5 furlongs, such a powerful win in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, really kicked it in down the stretch, beat a very fast horse in Cave Rock. National Treasure was 3rd. Blazing Sevens was 4th. I wasn't that impressed with the strength of last year's Champagne, although Verifying was 2nd. And remember when they ran that Champagne, I just thought it was a little subpar.
Mm-hmm.
So who are the new shooters? You could possibly, I think the only way you're going to beat Forte is if you steal the race, and the horse that could do that is Mage, the one-time starter for Gustavo Delgado. I think he'll be on the lead. You'll probably have Legacy Isle sitting back. The next flight would probably have, Forte down on the inside, Il Miracolo probably on his outside. Maybe another flight back to, Blazing Sevens, Cyclone Mischief, Dangerous Ride. The 8 Rocket Can is probably going to be far back, and your trailer is going to be Shadow Dragon. So that's the visual of how this race could unfold. And if you're going to beat Forte, I think you're going to have to steal it with modest fractions. And I don't think there's a whole lot of speed in here.
It doesn't appear that, there is. And, with Mage, he does, scream sprint to me and not wanting to go this far as his preferred distance. But if he does have a loose and lonely lead, as all of the racing experts like to say, maybe he would be able to steal it on the front end because he doesn't have that much pressure on him. And so
we're waiting to see he does show speed. And when you're thinking he might not want to go this far based off of his breeding, the damn Puka, she won going a route of ground, for Bill Mott over the years. Anywhere from, let's see, she's got victories at 1 mile 16th on the dirt. She broke her maiden by 16 lengths at Belmont in 2014. Came back and won at 1 mile 16th on yielding turf. Won again in an off the turf 1 mile 16th race, and then on the turf at 1 mile and 70 yards. So I don't think the distance of ground. I think where you're at is you're not sold. Good Magics want to go around.
I'm a little bit. It's that, and then the route experience of Puka is turf per se, and then you go back even further, and it's more sprinty. And so that's maybe my question mark with him is just do Good Magics want to go this far, and is he going to be able to steal it on the front end?
I'm going to trust in Javier Castellano, and that's the way you're going to beat Forte.
Speaking of Bill Mott, total happenstance. I'm walking into the office yesterday, And I'm walking up the infield tunnel, parking in the tunnel. And all of a sudden I see a familiar face, and it's Bill Mott's exercise rider assistant trainer, Penny Gardner, who's, in town, had a small procedure done. And so she's heading back down to South Florida. And so I talked to her and I said, so what do you think of your horses? They're running all around the world right now. They're, between Elite Power and, all the rockets, she says, are running well. And I asked her about Shadow Dragon in particular. And she said, I thought that he was going to win last time out in the Holy Bull. I think he could take a big step forward out of that. I think he needed the race, and he was coming with a big run down the center of the track. He's 12-1 on the morning line odds, whereas stablemate is 8-1 in Rocket Can. They're both coming off of layoffs, and so it'll be interesting to see if they can move forward off of that Holy Bull effort, but got the backing of Penny Mott, as I call her. You got Kenny Mott, who's Kenny McCarthy, and Penny Mott and Penny Gardner. So a lot of Mott's information and Shadow Dragons of an intriguing son of Army Mule, New York bred. Again, doesn't want to go that far with the Army Mule, but may have needed the race last time out in the Holy Bull.
Yeah, the Holy Bull, personally, I was underwhelmed by it. And there's a lot of horses coming out of that race, which is why I'm steering clear and focusing on Mage and probably Forte and Blazing Sevens. But, and what do you do with Cyclone Mischief?
Right. That's what I was just going to get to. I mean,
if Cyclone Mischief can run the race 2 back, yeah, he's going to be right there. Or does he show up like he did last time?
I mean, it's a big if. It just stands out on the page of that big, one-time effort in that, allowance victory where, you have to look at maybe the L next to it, adding Lasix. Did that move him up, or did he just, really want to get out of Kentucky and relish the Florida sun in early January in that race? And so, gosh, you're right. If he returns to that race, he's right there with, several of the other contenders in this field, aside from Forte, who I believe is still faster than him. So
yeah, Forte and Blazing Sevens, there's no brain surgery here. They are the 2 fastest horses in the race. And if like I said, I'm probably going to try and, from a gambling standpoint, see if Mage can pull off a wire-to-wire upset.
Yeah, I like that. He'll certainly be the right price. I'm going to give Shadow Dragon a try at long odds. We go to New York next. Let's go up to the Big Apple, where the Gotham is their featured race on the afternoon program. Race 9 on the Aqueduct card on Saturday, 4:56 p.m. Eastern time, is the Gotham, and it's a oversubscribed field of 15 in here. 14 can go, 1 also eligible. I got a couple of these that are cross-entered, including Clear the Air, who's cross-entered in the Battaglia, but we need 2 scratches out of there to draw into the field. Fort Warren is cross-entered at Parks, but it sounds like his connections are choosing to stay in New York. And then Recruiter for Cal Lynch is also cross-entered at Parks on Monday. Not sure the exact plans for him yet. So there's 14 in here can go, plus the 1 also eligible. You've got Lugan Knight, who won the Jerome, the prep for this race up here. Iron Clover, who's undefeated, back-to-back sprint victories down at Fairgrounds, ships in town for Brad Cox. He was made the 4-1 morning line favorite, and that tells you, how competitive that morning line odds maker David Aragona thinks of this race. 4-1 is your morning line favorite in Saturday's Gotham. I think pace makes the race, right, Darren? And there's a lot of horses that want to be on this lead in the Gotham. Yeah,
this is a fast pace, and that cross entry at Parks with Recruiter could help determine this race. That's a horse that's going to want to go. Ein Clover's going to go. Mr. Swagger's going to go from the inside. I think your next flight is probably Clear the Air, rather. Probably Carmel Road be close up. The 10 Lugan Knight right there. Probably, mid pack, you're going to have Clubhouse and Slip Mahoney. A little further back, uncorrelated, General Banker, Transect. Maybe a little bit behind him, Fort Warren trailing, along with the the 12 Rays Kane, and probably furthest of all will be How Great Is Nate. So you have a fast pace. And I think this is a race just as a gentle public service announcement to remember this is a 1-turn mile. Don't be thinking Derby handicapping this race. Don't be looking for that Derby horse out of here necessarily. It's a 1-turn mile. You have some very nice horses in here. I'm zeroed in on Lugan Knight and Slip Mahoney, and I'm cautious with the Slip Mahoney because Krupe came back and he was so far back in the Risen Star. But when he finished 6th or 7th, he did come running at the end, but the race fell apart. But Slip Mahoney ran very fast last time out for Brad Cox. Lugan Knight for Michael McCarthy has been, training over at Trackside, well rested since winning the Jerome on January the 7th, and realistically placed going right back to the mile at Aqueduct. Lugan Knight to me is where I think I'm zeroed in on.
It's interesting, talking to the McCarthy camp over at Trackside, because you look at the Road to the Derby series that is up at Aqueduct, and, there's some differing of distances where you start off, going short, you stretch out, you actually stretch out to 1 mile and 1/8 first. And as a 2-year-old, then you can cut back, stretch out, cut back. And I think this shows what Lugan Knight probably wants to do. He was, sprinting when he was here in Kentucky, and then the 1-turn mile at Aqueduct where he was able to dig in and hold off the charge of Arctic Arrogance, who, by the way, had a minor illness. He's not entered in this race, and plans for him are still to be determined out of his next start. And so that's why he's not
a very good horse.
Very good horse. He's proven, a lot in this Road to the Derby series in New York that he can run well at different distances in Arctic Arrogance. So Lugan Knight, I think he's doing what he wants to. Slip Mahoney, you go to that race 2 starts back where he, barely missed against Pat Patrice and what he came to do next for the Todd Pletcher camp. And so, but then again, you have the Krupe line. So maybe it was, Pat Patrice didn't like the mud that day. Maybe he wasn't mentally there. And maybe he could have won by, a larger margin just because he was maybe a little bit more immature at that stage. And so maybe Slip Mahoney is a step below the cut of what we've seen so far on some of these Road to the Derby contenders. What about Transect, who has raced 2 for 2 at Turfway on the Tapeta surface up there, who's trying dirt for the first time, but has trained on it. And the word on the street is has trained forwardly on it. He's by gun runner out of an AP Indy mare, so the dirt shouldn't be a problem at all for him. I think it's a question mark of, can he step up against better competition here in the Gotham? And I think the price is going to be right. And he's definitely proven pedigree-wise to like the dirt.
Well, here's the question. Is he better than Event Detail?
The one thing that I talked to Don Chatlos about, who's the racing manager for OXO Equine, and he was just exiting the casino. So I don't know if he was in a good mood or a bad mood, but he was a little chatty at Oakland. He said, we know that Transect should like the dirt because of the pedigree. The question mark with Event Detail is if he would like the dirt. They thought that he was talented enough to be able to try the dirt. And that's what they're doing, is they're trying to see, if these horses, do they belong in the dirt series on the Road to the Derby, or can they go back to Turfway on the Tapeta for the Jeff Ruby Stakes on March the 25th? And so I think that's sort of what you have to do at this stage. But he was confident that this horse, pedigree-wise, should like the dirt. Yeah,
I mean, that's the whole thing. When you ask the question of, will he like it, and surprised that he's in the spot rather than staying at home and running in the John Battaglia, you have to try. This time of year, you have a 3-year-old that's doing fine. You always want to give him a shot, and so Transect, interesting. But I'm going to need a wait and see.
Sure.
Type of approach.
Yeah. And again, this, as Darren alerted to, they're going a 1-turn mile. And so,
Mm-hmm.
it's a prep for the Wood Memorial going a mile and an eighth in early April. So
There's nothing wrong with winning the Gotham. The Gotham, by the way, we haven't seen a Gotham winner win the Kentucky Derby, or I believe a Gotham participant win the Kentucky Derby, other than
50 years ago.
Secretariat.
Yeah.
Secretariat. So, look, the Gotham's a great race to win. What do we have the pot at, $300,000? I'd love to win that. I think these are more Pat Day mile horses than they are Derby horses, but you never know.
And, you look at some of the previous races for a lot of these contenders in here, they've all gone short. And so, whether it be the 3/4 or the 6.5 furlongs or horses coming off of a layoff. And so it could be a prep for the Wood Memorial, or it could be, to see if they can prove themselves going a mile, which is a lot different than going 3/4 of a mile. And so, I think, again, nothing wrong with winning the Gotham, but this proves to see if they can stretch out in longer distances, like Iron Clover, who's, only gone 6 furlongs in the first 2 starts, but has been as impressive as possible. You can either, throw them to a mile and a 16th race or ship them to this 1-turn mile race. And, I think the Brad Cox camp and the 10 Strike camp has their eyes on a target and seeing if he can stretch out at all in distance.
Yeah, and Recruiter is going to be a big player. If he, he's going to, when I say big player, he would help quicken that pace. Undefeated in 4 starts. Going to be a part of that hot pace, though, and that's, again, I keep going back to, Lugan Knight and Slip Mahoney tracking, and maybe Lugan Knight might be hung out 3 wide, Yeah. But I'm hoping he's a few lengths back of that hot pace, tips out, and those 2 might be best.
Yep. So that's the Gotham. That goes at 4:56 Eastern, race 9 at Aqueduct. Again, 50 points to the winner, 20 for the runner-up, 15 for third, 10 and 5 for the 4th and 5th place finishers. That's the Championship Series trio this weekend on the road to the Derby. And then we go to close the prep season at Turfway Park at 9:25 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday night, where a big field of 12 plus 2 also eligibles entered. The John Battaglia Scooby Quando comes back off of winning the Turfway Preview in his debut. You also have the runner-up in the El Camino Real Derby, Gilmore, who will ship east and now is transferred to Brendan Walsh. He was actually made the 3-1 morning line favorite in the John Battaglia. I think it's between these 2 in this race, Darren, but it's, trying to see which one of these horses could step up and run back in 3 weeks to the Jeff Ruby Stakes.
Well, you're going to, it seems to be a little bit of the theme, with the exception of the Fountain of Youth, which I think could be modest, but this looks to have a fast pace for this mile and a 16th all weather affair. And again, we knew we'd get a big field, and Gilmore, I think as a new shooter, that El Camino Real Derby, I thought was a nice race between Chase the Chaos and Gilmore. Chase the Chaos was very impressive to me while winning that. He's going to be the horse to beat, but he's going to be a part of that fast pace along with Aristocracy, Gilmore, and then probably on the outside, I would think Freezing Point is going to go a little bit from out there.
The one thing to keep in mind is that quick run into the first turn at Turfway going the mile and a 16th in this race. And so there's a quick run in there. And if you're parked out wide in there, that's not the spot you want to be necessarily into that first turn. So they're almost forced to go. Yeah.
And the 1 is going to go from the inside, probably in that next flight, American Speed, and then maybe hung out with, Bromley being in the 10 hole is going to have to go. So then you have the others, tracking behind, and, that's the I think Gilmore is the best horse in the race, but he's going to have to keep going in a pace that I think is not going to be set up for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sort of seems like, a lot of the moves that have, been for a lot of jockeys in their heads a little bit at Turfway is sort of the wide sweeping move down the middle of the track in the final furlong at Turfway. And it's, they sort of seem to try and stay out of trouble. Whereas, there's a lot of the horses that are on the lead that, are tiring, and they force them to go even wider off the turn because they're out of horse and aren't able to cut that corner per se. And so, talking to Ben Colebrook and Luan Machado, they really couldn't talk more highly of Scooby Quando, and they're a little bit, on the bubble of the timing into this race. They love the timing of debuting him in the Turfway preview on January the 7th. And then they sort of didn't have anywhere to run. And so the first level allowance race going a mile on February the 11th came up, where Wadsworth, the winner, is targeting the Jeff Ruby out of that race, which is 6 weeks. And so
it's safe to say Wadsworth is the best 3-year-old we've seen up at Turfway.
Between Wadsworth and Funtastic, again, I think they're the two to keep an eye on at Turfway as far as the Jeff Ruby is concerned. And so, he ran 2.5 lengths behind Wadsworth, but he did, once he was able to get out, come with that wide sweeping move off the turn, does come back off short rest. But Ben Colebrook has said he's ready to go, and he needed the seasoning in that race. And so he's an intriguing prospect, I think, in the John Battaglia. What do they do after this race is still to be determined, but he's 6-1 on the line.
I think there are some interesting horses in here at a price. Moon Landing for Kevin Addard comes in from South Florida. Congruent for Antonio Sano comes in from South Florida. Both of them raced on turf last time out. They should appreciate the Tapeta, and they're going to get the pace set up. They should be far back. And wouldn't it be ironic at a price if Accident, who is 0 for 15 lifetime, he's always been right there, but the pace is going to shape up for him.
Oh yeah. He could get points in this race.
So, I would look towards a closer making that sweep, tip out move. So the 11, the 12, and maybe the 5 at a bomb.
9 races on tap on Turfway Saturday. The John Battaglia Memorial goes as race 8, 9, 25 Eastern. Race 6 is the $150,000 Cincinnati Trophy, which closes off the prep season on the road to the Oaks. Fun times. If you're around the Florence area, come on out to Turfway on Saturday. It'll be a fun night at the track, and a solid card up there, a good betting card, lots of full fields. So that's the action at Turfway on Saturday. Why don't we talk about, you want to go road to the Oaks? You want to go some other stops?
Well, let's stick with the Derby.
Yeah.
For the moment,
first.
We've got on, we're recording this on Thursday. And so on Thursday afternoon, you might be listening to this after it's already been run, but Thursday afternoon,
either sound like geniuses or idiots.
Well, no, just to pay attention to the 8th race at Gulfstream Park on Thursday, mile and 8th, first level allowance. And this will be a stepping stone to, the Florida Derby, most likely. And you have, Mr. Ripple making his return, classic catch for Todd Pletcher. Mr. Ripple's trained by Saffie Joseph. Point Proven's in here. Game change for Shug McGahee. Should be an interesting race that you'll monitor to see how good it is, and maybe it produces a starter in the April 1st Florida Derby. Overseas on Friday, we have the Patton Stakes. The European road to the Derby resumes, and Cairo for Aidan O'Brien is a very hot favorite. And I believe it's 2-5 on the morning line. And interesting that he shows up here after winning the Killuvulan Stakes. Is that how you say it?
I'm not going to even try and say it.
But it's a Group 3 over there in Ireland that, was run in mid-October. And often that race will produce starters in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, even on the quick turnaround. But he was a convincing winner as a 5-2 favorite last time out. Ryan Moore takes over. this suggests that they are, so this is either, a stepping stone to the road to the Derby where they want to bring this horse over, or maybe it's a stepping stone to the UAE Derby. But either way, pay attention to Cairo and Dundalk's 6th race on Friday. Post time is at 2:30 p.m.
Yeah, that's a fun. I'm excited to see this horse because I do think the UAE Derby is coming up, a very deep race. And so you would think that would be the next step, and then possibly the Derby if they're thinking about that. And so it'd be fun to see how he would match up against some of Europe's best that they got over there for the UAE Derby.
And then another race to pay attention to on the Fountain of Youth undercard. The 5th race is the Colonel Liam for 3-year-olds at a mile on turf. These are probably more, American turf runners on the Derby weekend undercard, but 2 horses of note that are Triple Crown nominated, both trained by Todd Pletcher, Dude in Colorado, and then Santorini. Santorini, very interesting. Looks like he has a dirt pedigree. I wouldn't be surprised if the winner of the race gets a shot at maybe a step to try the dirt in advance of the Derby.
Sure, and you can even go one race before that on Saturday's card, which is a maiden special event where Illustrated's a $1.1 million Fasig-Tipton March purchase for Todd Pletcher in the Coolmore camp, makes his debut, probably a little bit behind schedule to make the Derby, but you never know if he wins this race. Maybe they'll think highly of him and go to a race like the Bluegrass or the Florida Derby if he does it impressively. So.
Or maybe, even a race. Look, we're 9 weeks out. You start to do the math. The Lexington is 3 weeks out of the Derby, so that would be 6 weeks in between races. Mm-hmm. If a Pletcher type horse or a Chad Brown type runner were to win this type of race, that's a type of spot you could possibly see them.
Absolutely. So a fun weekend of Derby prospects ahead that all gets going here on Thursday and continues over through Saturday for a massive day at the races. The road to the Kentucky Oaks Championship Series continues on Saturday with the Devona Dale at Gulfstream Park, where Red Carpet Ready is the 2-1 favorite in a field of 10 fillies in this race. It was fun to see her come back and win the Forward Gal last time out. They're stretching out to a mile in this race. It's a 1-turn mile, and so they go, of course, the 1 1/8 distance in the Oaks on the first Friday in May, only going a mile here, so not necessarily seeing routers, but horses that are making that next progression in their distances, and she looks like the one to beat in this race.
I was a big fan of hers. She's going to be on the lead probably again on Saturday in the Devona Dale. She'll probably get pressure from the outside horse, Leave No Trace for Tyler Gaffalione. But this could be a fast pace. In here. So, tread lightly.
Absolutely. And then the Busher Stakes up in Busher Invitational up in New York at Aqueduct. That goes in the 4th event up there as I'm scrolling through my papers where
Asset Purchase is probably the horse to beat up there for Chad Brown.
Yeah. And it's interesting that Zorati was made the 9-5 favorite, because I do think Asset Purchase is probably going to get bet, but this horse ran huge on debut back in January at Aqueduct, and if she can take a step forward or even run back to that race, she could be very dangerous in this race. She ran a 99 Brisnet speed rating to win her debut, but asking a lot, stepping up in competition here for the Robert Falcone camp, 9-5 on the line in the Busher.
And don't go to sleep on Brad Cox, who has Capella in there for Juddmonte Farm. Florent Giroux rides.
Yeah, Flo's traveling all over the country to try and find himself a Oaks and Derby mount for this year. And then, don't fall asleep yet. 8:25 p.m. Eastern time goes the Cincinnati Trophy at Turfway, closes out the prep season on the road to the Kentucky Oaks. Botanical for Brad Cox and Chris Landeros looks to be the one to beat in here. 8-5 on the line. Also have the grade 3 placed Fun and Feisty making her return to the races, trying the synthetic for the first time. Bulsara for Mike Trombetta will also look to take some action here. A fun race on the road to the Kentucky Oaks prep season that'll offer 20 points to the winner.
Yep. Brad Cox looks very live with Botanical, and Botanical and Fun and Feisty are Kentucky Oaks nominated.
Absolutely. So they could take a step forward to the first Friday in May. Wouldn't be surprised if the winner tries dirt after this race down at Keeneland. It's quite the mashup of 45 minutes there, D. We rolled through these races. It's let's hope good weekend.
Let's hope the information in the rundown proves profitable for the listeners. Again, we just try to provide a little bit of visuals, race shape, what you might be able to expect. Our opinions are our opinions, and we're just guys in the grandstand.
Yeah, we're just talking. The fun part is, our offices are 3 feet away from one another, and we don't talk about these races until we come here and do the podcast.
It's by design. Yeah, we don't want. Every once in a while, somebody will drop down into our office. They'll say, "Hey, who do you like?" And that no, don't want to talk about it.
Yeah,
we save it for the show just to see.
It's pure
we
reaction.
Want fresh opinions.
Yeah.
If you liked our opinions and our race shapes, and you're enjoying this podcast, please leave us a review, preferably 5 stars for a 4-star performance, but that helps the podcast reach many. As we inch closer, we're 9 weeks out of the Kentucky Derby, and we're going to possibly, once we get to the month of April, maybe do this on a daily update. As we get closer to it, news of the day, we'll have a lot of the horsemen back. The stall applications for the spring meet, they close on Friday. The first condition book is online for the Derby week races. Maiden special weights, $120,000. The allowance races are, they range from 127 to 140-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got a record stake schedule of 50 stakes races worth more than $20 million. So a lot up for grabs. The horsemen and will start returning to Churchill Downs following the annual winter renovation of the backstretch. That's sometime around March the 21st?
March 21st is ship-in day. Greg Foley will be the first one here. March the 24th is the tentative date for the first day of training. And I say that because it's always, you get the pre-spring in Kentucky. It was 1 degrees yesterday?
81 degrees in Louisville, Kentucky yesterday. And my mother in San Juan Capistrano, California, told me it was 50 degrees and hailing in Southern California, while it's 81 degrees in Louisville.
Well, the temperatures are certainly going to change because I think
they've dropped.
Yeah, they've dropped. It's going to drop on Saturday for the Turfway jaunt up there. I've got my jacket ready to go. The only key is if I stop and get some Turfway food fare along the way at Skyline to get, some Cincinnati chili on the way up to Turfway on Saturday. But the pre-spring, you always get that cold snap either into, March and early April, but, we'll have to wait and see on that. But again, March 21st, these stall apps that Ben Huffman, Steve Hargrave, and the crew here at Churchill are going to have to sift through. I think it's going to be a really exciting meet overall. There's a lot of horsemen that are very excited to get back in town. And, if any of those trainers are listening, make sure your horses are ready to run Derby week here. Horses, aside from the Derby and Oaks races that finished 4th through last, the trainers get $1,000 bonus right to their trainer's account. So be ready to run when you come home here for the Derby week, which will be a great week of racing here in Kentucky. I think that's all we've got. Got anything else any other wisdom? I
got nothing.
Yeah, it's the end of basketball season, but the Louisville Cardinals.
It's been over for a while here in the
been over for Louisville. Bellarmine, had a tough loss the other night against Liberty. So over for us here. We're focused on horses here beneath the Twin Spires all the time. We'll talk again on Monday. Hope we're right with some of our opinions. If you want to have some opinions and put some money behind them, make sure you go over to twinspires.com. Lots of good bonuses and incentives over there. Hit that deposit button and do it early, do it often. Hopefully you can hit the withdrawal button come the end of the weekend. We'll be back on Monday and we'll chat. Good luck this weekend if you're betting. I know I certainly am, and we'll see you on Monday.